I could feel their eyes on the keys in my hand. The Porsche keys. Silver, heavy, cold against my palm. My son sat across from me at the restaurant table, frozen mid-sentence, their mouths slightly open like they'd just seen a ghost. Except I wasn't dead. I was more alive than I'd been in 20 years. Mom, Peter said slowly, his fork hovering over his untouched steak. Did you actually buy a Porsche? I smiled. Just smiled. Let the silence sit there like an uninvited guest at the table. Gavin leaned forward, squinting at the emblem on the key fob like he was trying to decode ancient hieroglyphics. That's a 911, isn't it? Those go for what? Over 100,000. 135, I said quietly, taking a sip of my wine. With the upgrades. The restaurant noise faded into background static. All I could hear was their breathing, their shock, their sudden, desperate interest in a mother they'd forgotten existed 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since my 62nd birthday. The day they didn't call, didn't text, didn't remember. The day I sat alone in my kitchen with a grocery store cupcake and a single candle, wondering when I became invisible to the two people I'd given everything for. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. But now they saw me. Now they cared. Funny how a sports car can make grown men remember they have a mother. So, Peter said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Did you, win the lottery or something? Inheritance. I set my glass down carefully. My hands wanted to shake, but I wouldn't let them. Not tonight. Tonight, I was calm. Tonight, I was in control. I made some investments, I said. Smart ones. That was all they were getting. For now. Gavin's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Investments? Mom, that's great. That's really great. He paused, glancing at Peter. Have you thought about diversifying? Because we could help you with that. Financial planning, estate management, that sort of thing. Estate management. The words tasted bitter, even hearing them. They weren't asking about my health, my happiness, whether I was lonely in that house that suddenly felt too big after Dad died. They were asking about my money, about what I had, about what they could get. I'd raised them better than this. Or, at least I thought I had. Actually, I said, setting my napkin on the table with deliberate slowness, I do have something important to discuss with both of you tonight. They leaned in, eager, hungry. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. The mental math of inheritance, of what Mom's new fortune might mean for them. I picked up my wine glass again, held it up to the candlelight, watched the red liquid catch and glow. I've made some decisions, I continued, about my future, about my money, about what really matters. Peter's knee bounced under the table. Gavin's jaw clenched. And I think it's time you both knew, I said, meeting their eyes one at a time, exactly what I plan to do with every single penny I have. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with promise and threat, and something else they couldn't quite name yet. Something that looked a lot like justice. I raised my glass slightly, smiled that same quiet smile, and let the moment stretch just long enough to make them squirm. But first, I said, let's finish dinner. After all, we have so much catching up to do. If you think they were proud of me, think again. What happened next left them speechless. But before that, let me take you back to how it all began. And hey, if you're still with me, don't forget to like and subscribe. This story is about to get real. 3 weeks earlier, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that presses down on your chest and reminds you that you're alone in a house that used to burst with noise and life, and the chaos of raising 2 boys who needed everything from you. It was my birthday. 62 years old. I'd been on this earth for more than 6 decades, and the only one who remembered was the automated email from my pharmacy offering me a discount on prescriptions. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, stared at my phone. Nothing. No texts. No calls. No happy birthday, Mom, with a string of emojis that Gavin always used to send when he was younger. Nothing from Peter either, who used to wake me up with burnt pancakes and orange juice when he was 10, grinning like he'd just invented breakfast. The clock ticked. 8 in the morning became 9. 9 became 10. I told myself they were busy. Peter had his law firm, those 80-hour weeks he always complained about. Gavin had the startup, the meetings, the investors he was constantly chasing. They had lives. Important lives. But I'd had a life too. A life I'd spent raising them, feeding them, driving them to soccer practice and piano lessons and emergency rooms at 2 in the morning when Gavin broke his arm falling off the neighbor's fence. Have you ever felt invisible to the people you love most? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. By noon, I'd stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. By 2, I'd stopped expecting anything at all. I went to the grocery store. Bought myself a cupcake from the bakery section. Chocolate with white frosting. The kind Peter used to love when he was 7. I grabbed a single candle from the baking aisle, one of those number candles, but they didn't have a 6 and a 2, so I just took a plain white one. The cashier didn't ask what I was celebrating. She scanned the cupcake, took my money, told me to have a nice day in that flat voice people use when they say things they don't mean. Back home, I put the candle in the cupcake. Lit it with the matches I keep by the stove for when the pilot light goes out. Sat there at the kitchen table, watching the small flame dance and flicker in the afternoon light coming through the window. I thought about making a wish. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Close your eyes, make a wish, blow out the candle? But what do you wish for when the people you'd wish about don't even remember you exist? I blew it out anyway. Watched the smoke curl up toward the ceiling. Took a bite of the cupcake. It was too sweet, the frosting leaving a chemical aftertaste on my tongue. My phone buzzed. Finally. I grabbed it so fast I almost knocked over my coffee. My heart jumped, that pathetic little leap of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd remembered. It was an automated reminder from my dentist. Cleaning scheduled for next month. I set the phone down. Looked around my kitchen. The cabinets I'd painted myself after Tom died because I needed something to do with my hands. The curtains I'd sewn because store-bought ones never fit right. The photographs on the refrigerator, held up by magnets shaped like apples because I'd worked as a school secretary for 30 years. Pictures of Peter and Gavin graduating. Peter's wedding. Gavin's promotion party. Me in the background of most of them, smiling, proud, happy for them. When was the last time they'd asked to take a picture with me? The sun moved across the kitchen floor. 4 o'clock became 5. 5 became 6. Dinner time in houses where families actually ate together. I looked out the window at the neighborhood. Mrs. Chin across the street getting her mail. The Morrison kids playing basketball in their driveway. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Tuesday that just happened to be my birthday. I whispered it out loud, testing the words. Maybe they really did forget me. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. I became a mother at 24. Young, terrified, completely unprepared for the tiny human they placed in my arms at the hospital. Peter came first, screaming and red-faced and perfect. Tom held my hand, promised we'd figure it out together. 2 years later, Gavin arrived. Another boy. Another mouth to feed, another future to build, another reason to wake up exhausted and do it all over again. Tom was a good man. A decent man. But he worked construction, and construction meant long hours and uncertain paychecks and coming home too tired to help with homework or bedtime stories or the 1,000 small emergencies that fill up a day with 2 young boys. So I did it. All of it. I packed lunches. Signed permission slips. Stayed up until midnight sewing Halloween costumes because store-bought ones cost too much. I worked part-time at the elementary school, so I could be there when they got out of class, answering phones and filing paperwork and smiling at parents who treated me like furniture. When Peter wanted to play Little League, I found the money. When Gavin needed a tutor for math, I found the money. When they both wanted to go to the same summer camp their friends are going to, I picked up extra shifts and found the money. Tom died when Peter was 16 and Gavin was 14. Heart attack. No warning. Just there one morning drinking coffee, gone by noon. The life insurance barely covered the funeral. I went full-time at the school. Took on weekend shifts at the district office. Said yes to every extra hour they'd give me because college was coming, and college wasn't going to pay for itself. Peter got into a good school, pre-law. I was so proud I cried at his graduation, standing in the bleachers with Gavin, watching my oldest walk across that stage in his cap and gown. Mom, Peter said that night, hugging me tight, I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to take care of you one day, I promise. Gavin said the same thing when it was his turn. Business school, scholarships and student loans, and me working every hour I could find to fill in the gaps. You won't have to work forever, Mom. One day I'll be successful, and you can retire early, travel, do all the things you never got to do. I believed them. God help me. I believed every word. They graduated. Got jobs. Good jobs. Peter joined a law firm downtown. Gavin started working for a tech company, then left to start his own thing with some college buddies. The calls came less frequently. The visits got shorter. Holidays became the only guaranteed time I'd see them, and even those started feeling obligatory, like they were checking a box. Visit Mom done. Peter got married. I met Jessica 3 times before the wedding. Nice girl. Distant. She called me Martha, never Mom, which was fine. I wasn't her mom. At the wedding, I sat at a table near the back with Tom's sister and some cousins I barely knew. Peter and Jessica did their first dance, cut the cake, laughed with their friends, all young and successful and shining with that confidence that comes from never having to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. I tried to catch Peter's eye during the reception, just to smile, just to let him know I was proud, that he looked handsome, that I was happy for him. He was talking to a partner from his firm. Didn't see me. Gavin stood next to me for maybe 5 minutes that night. Great party, right, Mom? Then someone called his name, and he was gone, swept up in the crowd of people who actually mattered. Years passed like that. Calls on Mother's Day. Cards at Christmas. Promises to visit that got postponed, rescheduled, forgotten. I retired at 60. Took my pension and my Social Security and told myself I'd earned the rest. Earned the quiet. Earned the right to stop being useful. But here's what nobody tells you about retirement. When you stop being useful, people stop seeing you at all. Last Thanksgiving, I drove 3 hours to Peter's house. Brought 2 pies I'd made from scratch. Pumpkin and apple, the kinds they used to fight over as kids. The house was full. Jessica's family. Peter's colleagues. People I didn't know making jokes I didn't understand. I sat on the couch, ate my dinner on a paper plate, watched Peter move through his own house like a man who'd made it, who'd built something, who'd left the past behind. He walked past me twice without stopping. Not on purpose. Just. I wasn't on his radar anymore. Gavin was there too. He hugged me when I arrived, that quick side hug people give when they're already thinking about the next thing. Good to see you, Mom. Then he spent the rest of the evening on his phone, pitching his business idea to someone who actually mattered. I left early. Said I was tired. No one tried to stop me. On the drive home, I thought about young Peter promising to take care of me. Young Gavin swearing I'd never have to worry again. And I thought about how promises are just words people say before they grow up and realize promises are expensive. Maybe they really did forget me. The Porsche dealership wasn't somewhere I'd planned to go. I was driving past it on my way to the grocery store, the same route I'd driven 1,000 times, when something made me slow down. Maybe it was the sleek silver car in the window, catching the afternoon sun like a promise. Maybe it was the fact that for 62 years I'd never done a single reckless thing. Or maybe I was just tired of being invisible. I pulled into the lot. Told myself I was just looking. Window shopping. Killing time before I went home to my empty house and my frozen dinner and another night of television shows I barely watched. The cars gleamed under the showroom lights. Reds and blacks and that silver one that had caught my eye from the street. They looked fast. Expensive. Like they belonged to people who had somewhere important to be. Can I help you? The salesman was young. Mid-30s maybe, with a smile that was friendly but slightly uncertain. Like, he wasn't sure if I was a serious buyer or a woman who'd wandered in by mistake. Just browsing, I said automatically. The same thing I always said in stores where I didn't plan to buy anything. He nodded. Well, let me know if you have any questions.
I'm Derek.
I walked along the showroom floor, running my fingers along the smooth curves of a black convertible. The leather seats looked soft. Expensive. The kind of soft that comes from cows raised in better conditions than most people. That's the Boxster, Derek said, appearing beside me. Great car. Reliable, fun to drive, and it's actually pretty practical for everyday use. I almost laughed. Nothing about this was practical. Practical was my 15-year-old Honda, with the broken air conditioning and the check engine light that had been on for 2 years. But I didn't laugh. Instead, I heard myself ask, what about that one? I pointed to the silver car in the window. Derek's eyebrows went up slightly. That's the 911 Carrera. Top of the line. Absolutely beautiful machine. How much? He hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough for me to see him recalculating, trying to figure out if this gray-haired woman in Target jeans could actually afford the number he was about to say. $135,000, he said. With the premium package and upgrades. I should have walked out. Should have laughed it off. Thanked him for his time. Gone back to my sensible life where I bought generic cereal and clipped coupons and saved every penny because that's what responsible people do. Instead, I said, can I see it? Would you dare do something bold just for yourself at 62? Let me know below. Derek's entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just a woman browsing. I was a potential sale. He opened the door with a flourish, gestured for me to sit in the driver's seat. The leather wrapped around me like a hug. The steering wheel felt solid under my hands. Everything smelled new, expensive, like possibility. Mind if I ask what brings you in today? Derek asked, leaning against the open door. What brings me in? My son's forgetting my birthday. 30 years of putting everyone else first. 6 decades of being careful, responsible, invisible. I'm retired, I said instead. Thought I'd treat myself.
He grinned.
You've earned it. Why not take it for a drive?
Why not?
Because it was crazy. Because I couldn't afford it. Because at 62 years old, women like me didn't buy sports cars. We bought sensible sedans with good gas mileage and safety ratings. But Tom was dead. My sons had their own lives. And my pension and Social Security and the life insurance I'd invested carefully over the years was sitting in the bank earning interest for a future that kept feeling further away. Okay, I said. Let's drive. Derek grabbed the keys. We pulled out of the lot, and he directed me toward the highway. Give it some gas on the on-ramp, he said. See what she can do. I pressed the pedal. The car didn't just accelerate. It launched. Pushed me back against the seat with a force that made my heart jump and my hands grip the wheel tighter. The engine roared, and suddenly we were flying, the world blurring past the windows, and I was grinning like an idiot. Nice, right? Derek said. Nice didn't cover it. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Really alive. Not just existing, not just getting through days that all bled together into a fog of routine and loneliness. I felt powerful. Present. Like I mattered. We drove for 20 minutes. I didn't want to stop. Didn't want to go back to the dealership, back to reality. Back to being sensible Martha who never did anything for herself. When we finally pulled back into the lot, Derek was still grinning. So, what do you think? I looked at the car. At my reflection in the side mirror. At the woman staring back at me who looked awake for the first time in forever. I'll take it, I said. The paperwork took 3 hours. Bank transfers, insurance forms, more signatures than I'd signed in my entire life. Derek kept asking if I was sure, if I wanted to think about it, if I needed to talk to family first. I told him I was sure. I didn't need to think. And my family wasn't part of this decision. I drove off the lot in that silver Porsche feeling like I'd stolen something. Like someone was going to chase me down, pull me over, tell me there'd been a mistake, that cars like this didn't belong to women like me. But no one stopped me. I drove home, parked it in my driveway, and sat there for 10 minutes just staring at it through my living room window. It was real. It was mine. And for the first time in 3 weeks since my birthday, I felt something other than forgotten. I took a picture, posted it to Facebook with a simple caption, treating myself. Never too late to live a little. I didn't expect much. My Facebook friends were mostly old colleagues from the school, a few neighbors, some distant cousins who shared memes about grandkids and recipes. The likes started coming in immediately. Then the comments. Wow, Martha. You go, girl. Beautiful car. You deserve it. I smiled at my phone, felt that little rush of validation that social media gives you, even when you know it's shallow and temporary. Then my phone rang.
Peter.
My heart did that stupid jump again. Hope. Even after everything. Even after weeks of silence. Hey, Mom, he said, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. I just saw your Facebook post. Is that your car? Not, how are you? Not, sorry I missed your birthday. Just straight to the car. Yes, I said simply. I bought it yesterday. Silence. I could almost hear him processing, recalculating, trying to figure out how his school secretary mother could afford a Porsche. That's great, Mom. Really great.
He paused.
So, things must be going pretty well for you financially? There it was. The real question hiding behind the small talk. I'm comfortable, I said. Right. Well, that's good. That's really good. Another pause. Listen, Jessica and I were actually thinking about coming down to visit soon. It's been too long. It had been 6 months. Not that he was counting. That would be nice, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yeah, and maybe I could, take a look at your finances? Just to make sure everything's set up properly. Estate planning, tax optimization, that kind of thing. It's what I do. I knew. He'd told me at his wedding, at Thanksgiving, every time we'd spoken for the past 5 years. My son the lawyer, so successful, so important. I'll think about it, I said. We hung up. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Gavin. Text message.
Mom.
Just saw the Porsche. That's amazing. Maybe we could grab lunch this week? Would love to catch up. Also, would love to take that beauty for a spin if you're up for it. I stared at the text, at the emoji, at the sudden enthusiasm from a son who hadn't responded to my miss you text 2 weeks ago. They forgot my birthday but remembered my Porsche. Funny how that works. I typed back, lunch sounds great. How about Saturday? Both of them responded within minutes. Both suddenly available. Both suddenly interested in their mother's life. I set my phone down, walked to the window, looked at the car sitting in my driveway like a silver middle finger to every year I'd spent being overlooked. And I smiled. Because I was about to give them exactly what they wanted. A visit with Mom. What happened when they came over will make your jaw drop. Saturday came with perfect weather. Sunny, warm, the kind of day that makes you forget it's October and winter's coming whether you're ready or not. I made lunch. Nothing fancy. Sandwiches, pasta salad, lemonade. The kind of meal I used to make when they were teenagers and their friends would crowd into our kitchen after soccer practice. Peter arrived first, driving his Lexus. Jessica wasn't with him. Work thing, he said, but I knew better. Jessica had never been comfortable around me, and a mysterious invitation from the mother-in-law who just bought a Porsche probably set off alarm bells. Gavin showed up 20 minutes later in his Tesla. He hugged me at the door, that same quick side hug, but this time he held on a second longer.
Good to see you, Mom.
You look great. I didn't look any different than I had at Thanksgiving. But the Porsche in the driveway made me look great apparently. We ate on the back patio. They asked about the car, about where I'd gotten the money, about my investment strategy. I kept my answers vague. Deflected. Asked about their lives instead. Peter talked about a case he was working on. Big client, high stakes, lots of billable hours. Gavin talked about his startup, the funding round he was chasing, the investors who were finally taking him seriously. I listened, nodded, smiled in the right places. Then Gavin set down his lemonade and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So, Mom, Peter and I were talking and we think it might be good for you to have some professional help managing your finances. With the investments and the car, and everything. We just want to make sure you're protected. Protected. Like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with her own money. That's sweet of you to worry, I said. We're not worried. Peter jumped in quickly. We just think, at your age, it makes sense to have a solid plan in place. Estate planning, trusts, that kind of thing. I could set it up for you.
Pro bono, obviously.
Family discount. If you were in my shoes, would you confront them or stay silent and watch? And I could help with the investment side, Gavin added. Diversification, growth strategies. My business partner used to work at Goldman Sachs. He knows his stuff. They had it all figured out. A whole plan for my money that they discussed without me. Probably over beers, congratulating themselves on being such good sons, looking out for their aging mother who clearly couldn't handle her own affairs. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. Let me think about it. Peter's jaw tightened just slightly. The same expression he used to get when I wouldn't let him have dessert before dinner. There's not much to think about, Mom.
It's just smart planning.
I said I'll think about it. The air shifted. Gavin glanced at Peter. Peter glanced back. A silent conversation I wasn't part of. Can I use your bathroom? Gavin asked, standing up. Of course. You know where it is. He disappeared inside. Peter cleared his throat, started talking about some charity event Jessica was organizing. I half-listened, watching a bird hop along the fence line. Then I heard it. Low voices from inside the house. Gavin wasn't in the bathroom. He was in the kitchen on the phone. I stood up quietly, moved toward the patio door. I'm telling you, she's got serious money, Gavin was saying. The car's just the start. She's been investing, and from what Peter found out, there could be way more than we thought. My chest tightened. We need to make sure we're in the will, he continued. Like, specifically named. And maybe get power of attorney set up soon, just in case. You know how old people can get weird about their money. Old people.
That's what I was to them now.
Not Mom. Old people. I stepped back onto the patio. Peter was scrolling through his phone, pretending he hadn't just orchestrated this whole visit as a reconnaissance mission for my bank account. Gavin came back out a minute later, smiling like nothing had happened. So, any chance I could take the Porsche for a spin after lunch? I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the son I'd raised, the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers. The teenager who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. Where did that boy go? Actually, I said slowly, I need to run some errands this afternoon. Maybe another time. Disappointment flashed across his face, quick as lightning, then covered with another smile. Sure. No problem. They left an hour later. Promises to visit again soon. Reminders about the financial planning. Gavin kissed my cheek. Peter gave me a pat on the shoulder. I watched them drive away, one expensive car after another disappearing down my suburban street. Then I went inside, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Clara Mitchell. We'd worked together at the school for 15 years before she retired to open a small bakery downtown. It barely broke even, but she loved it. Poured her heart into every cake, every cookie, every loaf of bread. I hit call. Martha? Clara answered, surprised. We texted sometimes, but rarely called. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I said. Actually, better than fine. I have a proposition for you. And just like that, I decided exactly what I was going to do with my money. Clara's bakery sat on a corner downtown, wedged between a yoga studio and a used bookstore. The sign out front was hand-painted, slightly faded. The display window showed 3 cakes and a tray of cookies that looked homemade because they were. I'd driven past it 100 times. Stopped in occasionally for coffee and a muffin, chatting with Clara across the counter while she worked. Now I was standing in front of it with a very different purpose. The bell chimed when I walked in. Clara looked up from behind the counter, flour dusting her apron, her gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. Martha. Twice in 1 week. What's the occasion? I want to invest in your business, I said. She laughed. Actually laughed, like I'd just told the funniest joke she'd heard all day. Then she saw my face and the laughter died.
Wait.
You're serious? Dead serious. We sat at one of the small tables by the window. I laid it out for her.
$52,000.
Enough to expand, to hire help, to finally advertise properly and compete with the chain bakeries that were squeezing out small businesses like hers. Clara stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Martha, I can't take your money. What if the business fails? What if I can't pay you back? Then it fails, I said simply. But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have given yourself a real shot. Why? She shook her head, overwhelmed. Why would you do this? Because my sons wanted my money to secure their futures. Because for 62 years I'd given everything to people who took and never once asked what I wanted. Because Clara actually cared when I walked through her door, remembered how I took my coffee, asked about my life like it mattered. Because women like us deserve to own something, I said. Something that's ours. Something we built. Her eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand, squeezed it tight. Are you sure about this? I'd never been more sure of anything. We drew up papers, made it official. Clara became not just my friend, but my business partner. We planned the expansion, talked about new equipment, argued over whether to add sandwiches to the menu or stick with baked goods. For the first time since Tom died, I had a purpose. Something to wake up for that wasn't just existing until the next holiday, the next obligation, the next disappointment. The bakery started transforming. New ovens, fresh paint, a bigger display case. Clara hired 2 part-time employees, both women from the neighborhood who needed work. Word spread. Customers came back. New customers discovered us. The reviews online started piling up, all glowing, all talking about the best cookies in town and the friendly woman who remembered your name. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's success that speaks for itself. Don't go anywhere. This story is about to turn beautifully poetic. Peter called during the 3rd week of construction. Hey, Mom. Haven't heard from you in a while. Just checking in.
Checking in. Right.
More like checking on his potential inheritance. I've been busy, I said. Busy? Doing what? Investing. Like you suggested. I could hear the interest sharpen in his voice. Oh yeah? In what? A friend's business. Silence. Then, carefully, what kind of business? A bakery. More silence. Longer this time. A bakery? Mom, did you put money into a bakery? I did. How much? Enough. His tone shifted, that lawyer voice coming out. Mom, small businesses fail 90% of the time in the first year. That's a terrible investment. You should have talked to me first. We could have set you up with something stable, diversified. Bonds, mutual funds, real estate investment trusts. I don't want bonds, I said calmly. I want to help my friend succeed. This isn't about helping friends. This is about your financial security, about your future, about making sure you're taken care of when you can't work anymore. I'm already retired, Peter. I don't need to be taken care of. I need to live. He didn't understand. Couldn't understand. To him, money was about security, about building walls against uncertainty. To me, it had become about finally choosing something for myself. We hung up after a tense goodbye. 10 minutes later, Gavin called. Peter had clearly briefed him. Mom, we need to talk about this bakery thing. No, I said. We don't. You're making bad decisions. We're worried about you. You weren't worried when you forgot my birthday. You weren't worried when I ate Thanksgiving dinner alone in the corner of Peter's living room. You're worried now because I'm spending money you think should be yours. The words came out harder than I'd planned, but they were true, and I was done pretending. Gavin sputtered. That's not fair. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? He tried to recover, to explain, to justify. I let him talk. Then I said, quietly, I'm having a dinner party next month. You and Peter. Just the 3 of us. We need to have a real conversation.
About what?
About everything. I sent them both invitations the next day. Formal ones, printed on nice cardstock from Clara's friend who did calligraphy. It felt important somehow. Official. They both accepted. Of course they did. They needed to know what I was planning. Needed to assess the damage. Needed to figure out how to get back control of a mother who'd suddenly stopped following the script. I had 1 month to prepare. 1 month to decide exactly what I was going to say to the sons I'd raised, who'd forgotten who raised them. The weeks passed quickly. The bakery thrived. Clara glowed with an energy I hadn't seen in years. She introduced me to customers as her partner, said it with pride, like I'd done something remarkable instead of just writing a check. But that check meant everything.
To her. To me.
To the women we employed, who finally had steady work. Peter and Gavin both texted throughout the month. Casual check-ins. How was I doing? How was the bakery? Any chance I'd reconsidered the estate planning? I kept my responses short. Pleasant but distant. The way they'd treated me for years. You'll want to stay till the end for the dinner scene. It's where quiet justice takes center stage. I also started moving money. Not all of it. Not even most of it. But enough. I opened accounts they didn't know about. Made calls to lawyers they'd never meet. Set things in motion that couldn't be undone with a phone call and fake concern. Gavin showed up at my house unannounced one Thursday. Thought I'd drop by. See how you're doing. I let him in. Made coffee. We sat in the living room, the same room where he'd played with Legos as a kid, where he'd practiced presentations for school, where Tom had taught him to tie a tie before his first job interview. So this dinner, Gavin said, stirring sugar into his coffee. What's it about exactly? I told you. We need to talk. About my plans. My future. Things you should know. He nodded slowly. And the money? The investments. There it was. Always back to the money. That too, I said. He relaxed slightly, probably thinking he still had time to convince me, to steer me back toward their plan, their vision of what my life should look like. You know we love you, right? He said suddenly. Peter and me. We might not say it enough, but we do. It was the first time either of them had said that word in years.
Love.
And it came now, when they thought their inheritance was at risk. I know, I said. But I didn't. Not really. Not anymore. He left after 30 minutes, satisfied that he'd done his due diligence, that he'd shown up, that he'd said the right things. Peter tried a different approach. He sent flowers. Expensive ones, delivered to my door with a card. Thinking of you, Mom. Looking forward to dinner. Love, Peter. The flowers were beautiful. I put them on the kitchen table, stared at them for a long time. Wondered what it cost to buy back a forgotten birthday. To purchase forgiveness for years of neglect with roses and carnations and baby's breath. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I wanted to say. How I wanted to say it. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strange part. The anger had burned itself out weeks ago, replaced by something quieter.
Sadder.
A kind of acceptance that the sons I'd raised were gone, replaced by men I barely recognized. But I was also calm.
Clear.
This dinner wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. About finally saying out loud the things I'd swallowed for years. The morning came. I got up early, showered, dressed in something nice but not formal. I wanted to feel like myself, not like I was performing. I spent the afternoon cooking. Their favorite meals from childhood. Pot roast for Peter. Garlic mashed potatoes for Gavin. Apple pie from scratch because they both used to fight over the last slice. One last meal where I gave them everything. Before they would learn they'd get nothing. They arrived separately. Peter first, dressed in his work suit, probably coming straight from the office. Gavin 10 minutes later, casual but expensive, that tech startup uniform of designer jeans and a button-down shirt. We ate in the dining room. The nice china. The good silverware. Everything proper and perfect. The conversation was careful at first. They asked about the bakery. I told them it was doing well. They asked about my health. I said I'd never felt better. They asked about the Porsche. I said I drove it every day. What they didn't ask was why I'd invited them. What I wanted to say. What was coming. We finished the main course. I cleared the plates, brought out the pie, cut 3 perfect slices. Served them with vanilla ice cream, just like when they were kids. This is great, Mom, Peter said. Just like I remember. Yeah, Gavin agreed. Takes me back. I let them eat. Let them enjoy it. Let them think this was just a nice family dinner, a reconciliation, a return to how things used to be. Then I folded my hands on the table and spoke. I need to tell you both something. I started. About my plans. About my money. About what happens when I die. They stopped eating. Forks hovering. Eyes locked on me. I've been doing a lot of thinking since my birthday. I continued. About what matters. About what legacy means. About who deserves what. Peter opened his mouth to speak. I held up a hand. Let me finish. He closed it. I spent my entire life taking care of you both. Your father and I, we sacrificed everything to give you opportunities. To pay for college. To help you start your careers. To be there whenever you needed us. We know that, Mom, Gavin said softly. We're grateful. Are you? Because you forgot my 62nd birthday.
You forgot me.
And when you remembered, it wasn't because you missed me. It was because I bought a Porsche and suddenly became interesting again. The silence was deafening. Gavin stared at his plate. Peter's jaw worked, but no words came out. I heard you on the phone, I said to Gavin. That day you came for lunch. Talking about my will. About power of attorney. About making sure you got what you thought you deserved. His face went pale. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You both did. And that's when I realized something. I don't owe you my future just because I gave you your past. Peter found his voice. We're your sons. We're family. Of course we should be in your will. Should you? Because from where I'm sitting, family shows up. Family calls. Family remembers birthdays. Family doesn't treat their mother like an investment portfolio. I pulled out the envelope I'd tucked beside my chair. Set it on the table between us. Everything I own, I said calmly, is going into a foundation. A foundation that supports women starting small businesses. Women like Clara, who have dreams but no capital. Women who've spent their lives taking care of everyone else and deserve a chance to build something for themselves. The color drained from Peter's face. What about us? What about you? You have your law degree, your high-paying job, your house, your car, your life. Gavin has his startup, his investors, his opportunities. You have everything I work to give you. But the house, Gavin said desperately. Your savings, the investments. Will help dozens of women start businesses. Will create jobs. Will mean something beyond making 2 already comfortable men more comfortable. Peter stood up, so fast his chair scraped. This is insane. You can't just cut us out. I'm not cutting you out of my life. I'm cutting you out of my death. There's a difference. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. What about blood? What about obligation? What about it? I met his eyes, unflinching. Did blood make you call on my birthday? Did obligation make you visit before I bought a car that caught your attention? Gavin was crying now.
Actual tears.
Mom, please.
We're sorry.
We messed up. We can do better. I'm sure you can. And I hope you do. But not because you think there's money in it. Because it's the right thing to do. Peter grabbed his jacket. This is a mistake. You're making a huge mistake. Maybe, I said. But it's my mistake to make. My money. My choice. For the first time in 62 years, my choice. He stormed toward the door.
Stopped.
Turn back. You'll regret this. I regret a lot of things, Peter. But this isn't one of them. He left. The door slammed. The house shook. Gavin stood slower. Is this really what you want? Yes. What if we tried? Really tried to be better? I stood, walked to him, put my hand on his cheek the way I used to when he was small. Then be better. Not for my money. For yourself. For the man I raised you to be. He left quietly.
No Islam.
Just the soft click of the door closing. I stood in my dining room. The remains of our Last Supper spread across the table. The china. The silverware. The half-eaten pie. and I felt nothing but peace. They thought they could buy back love with fake smiles. But wait till you see how it all ended. 6 months later, I stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the wind whipping my hair, the Porsche parked behind me on the side of Highway 1. I'd moved, sold the house in the suburbs, the house where I'd raised my boys, where Tom had died, where I'd spent too many years waiting for the phone to ring. I bought a small cottage 20 minutes from the coast. 2 bedrooms. Big windows. A garden where I could grow tomatoes and herbs. Space for me and no one else. The bakery was thriving. Clara hired 2 more employees. We'd opened a second location across town. The foundation was set up. The lawyers had everything in order. The first grants would go out next month to 5 women with 5 dreams. Peter sent a stiff email about 3 months after the dinner. Legal language, talking about contesting the will, about undue influence and unsound mind. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Never heard about it again. Gavin tried harder. He called once a month. Asked how I was doing.
Told me about his life.
Never mentioned the money. Never asked for anything. I answered. Kept the conversation short but kind. Maybe he'd learn. Maybe he wouldn't. But my happiness didn't depend on his growth anymore. I joined a book club. Made friends with women my age who actually showed up, who remembered plans, who treated me like I mattered without needing a reason. I drove the Porsche every day. Sometimes just to the grocery store. Sometimes up the coast with no destination, the ocean on one side and mountains on the other, feeling alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Standing there on that cliff, watching the waves crash against the rocks below, I thought about the woman who'd sat alone on her 62nd birthday with a grocery store cupcake and a single candle. She seemed like a stranger now. Someone from another lifetime. I turned off the car radio. Let the silence fill the space. Good silence this time. Peaceful silence. I whispered out loud, testing the words. This time, I'm not waiting for a call. I'm celebrating me. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and pinks and purples. The kind of sunset you can only see when you stop long enough to look. I got back in the car. Started the engine. Felt that familiar thrill as it roared to life. And I drove. Not away from anything. Toward something. Toward a life I'd built for myself on my own terms, with no apologies. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I glanced at it at a red light. A text from Clara. Just closed the best week we've ever had. Thank you for believing in me. I smiled. Texted back. Thank you for giving me somewhere to put my faith. Sometimes justice isn't about payback.
It's about peace.
It's about realizing that the best revenge is building a life so full that the people who forgot you don't even leave a dent when they're gone. I kept driving. The road stretched ahead, endless possibilities, no one to answer to but myself. At 62, I'd finally learned what my sons never understood. Love isn't about what you give hoping to get something back. It's about what you choose to do when no one's watching, when there's nothing to gain except the satisfaction of being true to yourself. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly that.
True. Free. Meaning.
If this story touched your heart, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories about quiet strength and self-worth. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story about courage, second chances, and the power of choosing yourself. Because your story, just like Martha's, deserves to be heard. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, and tell us in the comments what you would have done in Martha's shoes. Let's inspire each other. Thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to live the life you deserve.